welcome back. This is the first video we're going to do on specific bands, and we're going to start with probably the most important band of all rock and roll and pop music, and definitely at least the most important band of the 1960s. Yes, we're going to talk about the Beatles. But before we get started, please like, subscribe, support the channel, and we'll keep making these videos as long as you do. I know I support your channel and I subscribe to you. It's free. Just click it. Do it. So this isn't a video of spoilers. I'm not going to play any music by the Beatles, and if we show any video, it's not going to be with any sound, so it's just to give you an idea of what's out there. But the Beatles, they started in 1960 actually, when they first got together, but Ringo didn't join the band until 1962. That being said, they didn't really hit the United States stage until 1964, and that was with the most memorable shows of that Ed Sullivan show ever did. It's all in black and white, so that's a trigger warning for people who can't stand black and white movies for some reason. But that was their first time in front of an American audience, and they hit like a hurricane. These four guys with their mop tops and their clean looks, cute smiles, and yeah, they came in ready to conquer. The women in particular in the United States, girls we'll say, because there was mostly young girls at the time, they couldn't get enough of them. When you do listen or watch the video from their first performance on the Ed Sullivan show, you really can't hear them very well. The screaming was deafening, and yeah, that may have even been termed for them because it was deafening. In fact, with the Beatles, their crowds were like that through all of their live performances, and the technology wasn't really at a point where they could hear themselves. And in 1966, they actually stopped performing live. The only thing they performed live after that was a rooftop performance near the end of their career. So you're really not going to find a lot of good live recordings of the Beatles. So I wouldn't look for them. They did make some videos. They made some music videos, which were really unheard of at the time. But by the time they started making them, they were so famous, they were making so many #1 hits that they had the money that if they wanted to make an artsy video for their music, well, they just did it because they could. But most of their music was love songs, was skiffle, pop music, basically left over from the 50s, at least at the beginning, up until 1964. And at that time, well, let's see, what changed? Well, they started writing their own music, for one thing, and they tried marijuana. Yes, they tried marijuana. It's a sad thing. In 1965, they went even further and tried LSD. And the music took off. It was incredible. Can you credit drugs for that explosion in creativity? Well, maybe, I don't know, but it just did. But regardless of why it happened, because of their new creativity and explosion of talent, they weren't writing songs just for the little girls anymore, and guys started listening to the music as well. Where most guys, I think, you know, and I was very young at this time, so I don't know, but it seems to me that a lot of guys were just intimidated because these good-looking guys could have taken any of their girlfriends, to be honest. And so this little boy band that would have just been another boy band stood out because they could play instruments, they could write songs, and the songs were incredible. So, you know, like I said, when in 1964, when they started writing their own music, they also stopped writing simple music. You know, even though they may have written a couple of songs before then, it wasn't like this. They were defining a generation. Rubber Soul was the first album to really feature any of this, and you know, by the next year they had grown their mop tops into full heads of long hair. Wonder where all this came from. And they were the poster children for the hippie age. And I should mention, and probably mention in all my videos, that at this time when you listen to a new song, you probably heard it on the radio first, unless you were proactive and bought an album when it first came out. And then generally you invited friends over and you all listened to it. It was a social thing. And if you listen to it alone, you probably listened to it many, many times over and over. And you explored the whole album, found the hidden gems, and a lot of that you don't get now. You stream the song that you like, and whatever else they put out, you may or may not hear. So again, if you want to hear something the way we heard it, listen to the studio recordings. And with the Beatles, to be honest, that's going to be kind of the main way you'll find it online anyway, unless you look for older or for recordings done by the individual members later. And of course, that's a different thing. Let's go through the albums, at least the most important or the most reactable songs. I'm not going to go through everything because they had a pretty extensive discography. But first album, Please Please Me. It's 1963. The songs that are most reactable was I Saw Her Standing There. It's the opening song of their debut album and the B-side of their first single. The second album was with the Beatles, and probably the most reactable song there is All My Loving. And A Hard Day's Night came out in 1964, and that one's kind of dear to me because it was my first record. I think I was probably four, maybe five when we got it, and my sister and I would play it over and over and over every morning downstairs, dancing around, and that sticks with you. Your first record, at least not one that wasn't Itsy Bitsy Spider or something like that. But Hard Day's Night, the title song is definitely a good one. There was a movie made by the same name, released in the same year, and again, black and white, so trigger warning for those of you who can't tolerate or are intolerant of black and white movies. Another song on the album that definitely reactable is Can't Buy Me Love, another big hit by the Beatles. Help in 1965 had extremely popular song that's very, very reactable, Yesterday. You may have even heard this one. If you haven't, don't pass this one up. This is definitely a good stop down the rabbit hole of from the Beatles. Beatles for Sale in 1964. I'm going to throw out 8 Days a Week. Very good song, very reactable, and it was the final album before really the transition came with the Beatles to more complex and more hippie music, I guess you'd say. And that was with Rubber Soul, 1965. In My Life was a song Lennon wrote. Drive My Car, and Nowhere Man, also extremely deep stuff. They weren't writing candy store music now, like I said. They were, and with their next album, in fact, they were about to get groovy. With Revolver, 1966. One song you definitely should listen to, and it was partly because it was it was a song that people said was the most realistic evocation of an acid trip. But this was a sound of reinventing music, backwards loops, tape looping, organized chaos, basically. And songs that I really love this album: Taxman, Eleanor Rigsby, Good Day Sunshine, Got to Get You in My Life. This is a great album to listen to from beginning to end, but yeah, these are definitely songs that you should hit on if you're not going to do full albums. And now we get to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. If you've only seen a few pictures of the Beatles, one of them is probably in their uniforms from the album cover of this album cover. This was a groundbreaking album. almost every song on there is gold level, top tier songs. A Day in the Life is probably one of the most reacted to songs from the Beatles, and it's hard to believe they played these on the radio, because some of them were a little longer than typical. But you know, the Beatles kept putting out hits. They were loved by radio stations, because you would get listeners if you were playing the Beatles, because they were the ones hitting the top of the charts with these songs. But yeah, A Day in the Life is one of the most enjoyable 5.5 minutes of music you'll ever listen to. I mean, it's again, it's one that you really should listen to from start to finish. But if you don't, you know, that's definitely the song that'll stand out. In 1967, the Beatles did the Magical Mystery Tour. Excuse me. I Am the Walrus is a standout from that album, and it's very much an experimental album. It's a delight for your ears. You're going to enjoy it. Again, if you listen to the whole album, you'll appreciate it even more than just listening to the singles. But then we get into the White Album. This has a lot of reactable material. Back in the USSR, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Blackbird, Rocky Raccoon, Helter Skelter, which is still considered possibly one of the first heavy metal songs, and Revolution, same genre, same type of feel to it. This was an album that the band was writing at a time when there were a lot of tension between the members, and actually, Revolution was George Harrison's kind of a dig at the other members, and it actually features additional guitar with Eric Clapton on it. In 1968 also was The Yellow Submarine, another one with a movie to it, animated movie. Very clever stuff. The title song was a hit, definitely one you want to listen to if you haven't heard it. In fact, that's just one of the songs that I think I'm always shocked if somebody hasn't heard Yellow Submarine. But also All Together Now and All You Need Is Love, two really good songs off that album. I would suggest watching the movie. It's quirky, it's weird, but that's kind of what you would expect from the 1960s, especially from a band that was the center of the hippie culture. In 1969, the Beatles did Abbey Road. This one is just full of hits. Memorable and just peachy keen tunes. So don't take my first picks and say, okay, that's enough of this album. Definitely explore this album. Come Together, Maxwell Silverhammer, Oh Darling, and Here Comes the Sun. Oh Darling, actually subtitled I Want You, is a song about John Lennon's love for Yoko Ono, and it's also a foray into heavy-ass music. You won't be disappointed, and back in those days, actually heavy meant good. If you were heavy, somebody said you're heavy, you were cool. And then the last album, Let It Be, they knew it was coming. The end was coming for the Beatles. They felt it, they could tell, and even with that in the back of their minds, they did an extraordinary album with, again, one of their most famous songs, Let It Be. Also on this album is Long and Winding Road and Get Back. Both totally different types of tunes, but extremely good. Don't miss these songs when you do your reactions. So obviously I'm only skimming the surface of the Beatles discography. And I'll be happy to give my 2 cents worth on more of their tunes. So like, subscribe, become a member so you can hear all my unsolicited musical recommendations. And for now, I appreciate your suggestions, comments, and like I said, subscribe so you can keep up with everything and let the good times roll.